What if the tiniest blob of life could actually think? Today we're looking at whether single-celled organisms might be conscious, and trust me, it's weirder than you expect. Let's dive right in.
Imagine this, a tiny blob of life. No brain, no nerves, no heart, floating in a drop of pond water. Now imagine it senses danger and decides to swim away. But what if that microscopic organism, which is devoid of brain, nervous system and heart, just changed its mind? From this scenario, a question arises. Can single-celled organisms actually be conscious?
So here's the kicker. We're talking about a blob that literally has less hardware than a Tamagotchi, and yet it acts like it's making choices. Scientists call this behavioral plasticity, but it kind of feels like amoebas are running Windows XP, laggy, no graphics card, but somehow still opening Microsoft Word.
Consciousness. It's one of those slippery concepts that everyone feels, but no one can fully explain. Is it the soul, the mind, or just the byproduct of our brain? Since ancient times, this question has puzzled thinkers. Aristotle thought of consciousness as a property of the soul, a metaphysical flame inside us. Fast forward over 1,000 years, René Descartes proposed something revolutionary, that the mind and body were two distinct substances. This was the infamous Cartesian dualism, and it kicked off centuries of philosophical headache, literally. Even modern legends like Francis Crick, the co-discoverer of DNA, got involved, trying to define consciousness through the lens of biology. But even today, scientists can't agree. Is consciousness a neuroscientific phenomenon? Something measurable in the brain? Or is it something deeper? Something woven into the very fabric of the universe?
This whole section honestly feels very Kurzgesagt core. Clean pacing, big ideas, a sprinkle of philosophy, and that, wait, what if the universe itself is conscious? Bomb at the end. It's wild that a video this polished isn't raking in millions of views. Like Aristotle, Descartes, and Francis Crick walk into a bar and YouTube's algorithm still looks away. Crazy. This is the kind of content that should be trending, not another guy eats 10,000 chicken nuggets. Speed run?
In modern neuroscience, consciousness is usually defined by our ability to experience awareness, to know what's happening inside and outside us, and to respond appropriately. It's a product of complex neural networks processing information. That's easy to demonstrate in humans, even in animals like dogs, dolphins, and octopuses. But here's the real question. What about life without a brain? Are creatures like amoebas or bacteria, who don't even have neurons, capable of any conscious experience? Or are they just biological automatons running on chemical scripts? This is where things get weirder. Some philosophers subscribe to a theory called panpsychism. It's the idea that consciousness isn't unique to humans or animals, but that it's a fundamental property of matter itself. Think of it like gravity or magnetism. In this view, everything, from a grain of sand to your pet cat, has some form of subjective experience. According to panpsychism, even a single-celled organism could be conscious, not in the way we are, but in its own primitive sense. Now, panpsychism sounds poetic, but it's tricky to prove, because it doesn't offer testable mechanisms, so scientists prefer frameworks they can poke and prod. That's where things get interesting. Meet Arthur Reber, a cognitive psychologist who proposed something bold in his 2018 book, The First Minds. He developed what's now called the cellular basis of consciousness, or the CBC model. In short, Reber argues that consciousness didn't emerge suddenly in humans or animals, but has existed in simpler forms since the earliest life. According to him, if an organism can make decisions based on environmental stimuli, then it's expressing a kind of basic consciousness.
Okay, this is where the video fully hits that brain-melting science TED Talk vibe. The jump from dogs and dolphins to amoebas having feelings is insane. Panpsychism basically says, congrats, your fridge might be vibing too, and then Arthur Reber drops in like, yeah, consciousness is OG. It's been around since day one. Honestly, that flips evolution upside down. Instead of humans being the peak of awareness, we might just be the latest firmware update in a very long chain of conscious blobs.
That doesn't mean it's thinking like us, but it is responding meaningfully, adjusting behavior, and critically making choices. Which brings us to one bizarre creature, Stentor rosali. This little trumpet-shaped protozoan lives in ponds, puddles, and streams. No brain, no nerves, just a single cell. Yet it might be the most compelling argument in favor of single-cell consciousness. Over a century ago, zoologist Herbert Jennings exposed it to carmine powder, a harmless irritant. What happened was mind-blowing. The stentor didn't just react randomly. It tried different strategies to avoid the irritation, moving its cilia, contracting its body, and eventually detaching and swimming away. It's like watching someone try to dodge pepper spray. It's not reflex, it's decision-making. And it gets even better. Recently, a Harvard team revisited Jennings' experiment. This time they used microplastic beads instead of carmine. Turns out modern stentors are less annoyed by carmine. Evolution strikes again. The results? Still the same eerie intelligence. The protozoans reacted. They tried different avoidance strategies, and when forced to choose between contraction or detachment, they chose randomly, as if flipping a coin. Dr. Jeremy Gunawardena, who led the study, noted, "They seem to change their mind after repeated irritation. No brain, yet they behave like something is computing the next move. It's both fascinating and unsettling."
This guy is basically the final boss of Pond Scum. Watching a single cell cycle through strategies like it's troubleshooting Windows 95 is wild. First wiggle, then shrink, then full-on eject button. That's not just reflex, that's improv comedy with stakes. The Harvard redo makes it even creepier. Coin flip decision-making without neurons sounds suspiciously close to free will. Imagine if your Roomba suddenly sighed, ugh, fine, I'll just detach. That's when you know consciousness is leaking out of the petri dish.
So, does this mean single-celled organisms are conscious? According to Reber's CBC model, yes. Because they show subjective decision-like behavior. They're not just reacting, they're responding, adapting. In Reber's eyes, that's enough to call it a form of consciousness. But mainstream neuroscience isn't convinced. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux makes a critical distinction. He splits consciousness into two forms: creature consciousness, awareness of the world and oneself; mental state consciousness, the reflective kind, where you think about being aware. Stentors and amoebas might have creature-like awareness, but not the self-reflective, I think therefore I am kind.
The one take is like, congrats amoebas, you're officially woke, while mainstream neuroscience is still clutching its pearls. Joseph Ledoux, drawing that line between creature consciousness and mental state consciousness, is kind of genius though. It's the difference between your cat knowing the vacuum is evil versus Descartes having a full-blown identity crisis.
They don't ponder existence. They don't write poetry about their puddles, but they still act, choose, and maybe feel in some way. Here's the takeaway. Most consciousness research focuses on creatures with brains, but maybe that's our mistake. If we zoom out, if we drop the brain-centric bias, maybe we'll see that the spark of consciousness began much earlier, quietly pulsing in single cells, swimming through ancient seas. Perhaps consciousness didn't suddenly emerge. Perhaps it always was, flickering faintly in even the smallest forms of life. If that's true, then the line between life and mind just got a whole lot blurrier.
Consciousness might not be the exclusive VIP pass for big-brained species after all. If even the tiniest cells are carrying some faint glimmer of awareness, then we're not standing at the top of the ladder, we're standing on its latest rung. That makes every pond, every puddle, every forgotten drop of water a potential theater for ancient microscopic thought. And if that's true, the story of life is not just about survival, but about an unbroken thread of experience stretching back billions of years. LectureIt did an amazing job with this video, and the link is in the description. The next video, let's just say it might take you somewhere completely unexpected. Stay nerdy.